Hey people, it's Nana's talking. Now you know I would have to report on this. This is officially from The Guardian. Now I can't post the links because of things I've talked about before. They won't allow me to post it, but let's just read off. Oklahoma Supreme Court dismisses lawsuit of Tulsa Massacre survivors. Leslie Benningfield Randall and Viola Fletcher, the last two survivors of 1921 events, sought to make city pay restitution. A decades-long fight for justice and restitution came to an end on Wednesday afternoon after the Oklahoma Supreme Court dismissed the lawsuit of the last two survivors of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. The suit, brought by Leslie Benningfield Randall and Viola Fletcher, both of whom are centenarians, sought to force the city of Tulsa, along with other defendants, to pay restitution to the two women who were children at the time of the racist massacre. Brought under Oklahoma's public nuisance law, the lawsuit argued that Tulsa race massacre affected the city today and is responsible for Tulsa's ongoing stratification between black and white residents. Black Tulsans were never compensated for their loss. The 9-member Supreme Court upheld a district court judge's decision in Tulsa last year, in which the judge ruled that the plaintiff's grievances were legitimate but did not fall within the scope of the state's public nuisance statute. What sense does that make where they say it's legitimate but does not fall? It sounds like they've just created some word salad to just sidestep the issue. Anyway, let's keep going. The decision seemingly attempted to close the door to future fights for reparations. Before the massacre, Greenwood was a thriving black district of Tulsa of more than 10,000 black Americans, one of the most affluent neighborhoods in the country, known as Black Wall Street. That changed on 31st May 1921 when Dick Rowland, a black teenager, was accused of assaulting a white teenage girl. Tulsa Tribune, a white-owned newspaper, called for white citizen to nab Negro for attacking girl in elevator and to lynch a Negro tonight. White police officers encouraged a growing white mob to go home, get a gun, and get a N-word. Right there, the police themselves encourage the violence. That automatically places all the violence responsibility on the city and the state. So this is just what Professor Black Truth calls white fear. It isn't relevant because I say so. The response was swift. White pilots flew over Greenwood, dropping dynamite onto the streets, which was considered to be one of the first aerial bombardments of a U.S. city. This was 80 years before 9/11. But I guess it doesn't matter because it's black people being destroyed. The destruction inflicted upon the Greenwood community by the mob was staggering, including the killing of between 100 and 300 people, predominantly African Americans, and the destruction of more than 1,200 homes, schools, churches, and business, the Supreme Court's decision acknowledged. Even after the initial violence subsided, local officials engaged in actions that exacerbated the harm. State and local officials participated in the mass arrests and detention of Greenwood residents, and black detainees could only be released upon the application of a white person. When Greenwood residents attempted to rebuild their community, they were met with frustration. In one notable example, local officials attempted to block the rebuilding of the Greenwood community by amending the Tulsa Building Code to require the use of fireproof material in rebuilding the area, thereby making the costs prohibitively expensive. On the 100th anniversary of the massacre, Fletcher recalled the violence, people being killed. And I want to say this. This is another thing people have been going on and on about. Our ancestors died for the right to vote. Your ancestors also died for the right to own land. Greenwood was built on black-owned land. That was one of the key things that allowed it to be rebuilt because the black folks who prospered on it owned it. Every black folks who can should buy land. Any land that is suitable or of value, and even land that may or may not be valuable depending upon what you want to do with it, but you should try to get land. That is the number one thing that you should do with your money. And of course, common sense, don't put all your money in land. Never invest any money that you cannot afford to lose, for obvious reasons. But every black folk who has the financial means to should buy land. Okay, let's keep going. Today's holding is consistent with our recent public nuisance jurisprudence, expanding public nuisance liability to include lingering social inequities from historical tragedies and injustices runs the risk of creating a new, unlimited, and unprincipled form of liability wherein both state and non-state actors could be held liable for their predecessors' wrongdoing, in which current actors played no part. The court wrote, to hold otherwise would place Oklahoma courts in the unorthodox position of fashioning remedies for these claims or venturing into the realm of outright policy making, but for which we decline to do. What? Courts have been making laws and deciding policy for years. This is just a word salad where the court decides, look, we just don't want to do it, so we've just decided against it. There is no reason. Think about this. Black folks, I mean, if laws have been passed where, like RICO, racketeering and organized crime laws, where black folks can be sent to jail simply by being attached to the people who've committed a crime. Doesn't require any proof that they've committed a crime, just to be related to them, and they can be sent to jail, and they can lose all their assets. That's how insane these laws are. That if someone finds a small piece of drugs or drug paraphernalia in a house, everybody in the house can be arrested. They can seize the bank accounts, they can seize the house, they can seize all the assets. That's never been found unconstitutional, or how insane and ridiculous that is, like the right to property. But because they say, oh, well, it would hold people liable. It was not a problem to hold people liable for drugs who had nothing to do with it and had never been proven to be guilty. But now that the government is being held responsible for what has been done to black folks, no, I'm sorry, we can't hold the government responsible. This is absolutely insane. What I would suggest for anybody is, if you are a black folks with means, they should all boycott Tulsa specifically, and the state of Oklahoma in general. If you have for finances, don't invest in Oklahoma. If you are traveling through Oklahoma, try to fill up on all the supplies before you get in, before you travel through. In fact, if you can, travel around it. Don't buy anything that comes from Oklahoma. Make these people, if they don't want to pay reparations, then Oklahoma and Tulsa should face consequences financially and loss. Yeah, and any black folks who can, I would say, is just if they have the means to, try and relocate out of the state of Tulsa. Take all your money and tax dollars out. Anyway, so please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.